Alright, it says we're live. I actually have upgraded my setup here, you guys. I have my own screen so I can actually kind of see your comments. Somebody just said, buy dog coin. I guess that's an alternative. I know we're joking. Anyway, hey, it's me, David Wilcock. Thanks for coming. And it's been a while, huh? I've been very busy with a lot of mission-critical objectives that really only matter for the world that we're going to have after these changes that are anticipated. The reason I am giving you this today is that I do consider this to be an urgent period of time. I have had a variety of briefings that have come in, and I've also had dreams coming in. In addition to that, looking at a lot of conventionally available data in the public sector regarding pyramid-shaped UFOs. If you haven't seen this, then prepare to be absolutely blown away, because whether you're paying attention or not, the government, if you want to call it that, is preparing to drop a big D, the big D, disclosure, on us apparently in June. Senator Marco Rubio, who I very much support, has said that it might be delayed a little bit, so don't expect it to be right on June 1st. But Rubio and others are saying that this is going to be pretty freaking incredible. We also heard from the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe. So what we're expecting again, in case you didn't quite catch the very beginning, is there is a formal acknowledgement, and I have almost 400 slides in this show. I'm going to try to keep it under 2 hours. And a formal acknowledgement that sometime in June, that apparently it's going to include the idea that UFOs do exist, that they have crashed here, that they did retrieve wreckage. They've actually talked about a memory metal that they even gave the name nitinol to, saying that you can crumple it up and it can unfold. This has already been disclosed. So when we look at what's already been disclosed, we have to consider that this is a very interesting situation, because you can just take the pieces, the components that are already present, and have a pretty good idea of where this might actually end up going. The reason I'm so excited about this, going to the slide for a moment here, is that I consider that we're still in the middle of this global, very acrimonious divorce. In fact, one of our very top insiders, who I've only been able to actually speak to for real, let's go back to the camera here, said that we're 7 moves away from checkmate, and both sides know it. Now, the next slide, I'm not going to actually read it to you. I just want you to read it and consider the possibility that a lot of people are saying that whether it's aliens from Mars, riots, earthquakes, kidnaps, shootings, or a flat tire, that there might actually only be one thing. So, well, if we have an echo, there's really not a whole lot
I can do about it.
Yeah. So I'm sorry about the echo, everybody, but you know, whatever the heck it is going on, let me see if I can hear it. Audio test 1 2, test 1 2. Yeah, I don't even hear it. So let's just keep going. All right. So yeah, don't move anything. Let me do it for a second. Don't move the mouse, please, because I am blowing out the trim a little bit here. So, you know, it's back to the slide, back to the camera. What we're really dealing with here is a situation that back to the slide, I'm putting in multiple research hours per day on all of the things going on. You know what's going on, I know what's going on, but I am not able to publicly comment about those things at this time whatsoever. The mood and the environment has become incredibly oppressive, and my feeling is that I needed to preserve this channel until we get through what I could call the end game, which is something that might be going on pretty soon. Now, what do I mean by end game? By end game, I mean that for a long time we have been anticipating that there will be some sort of very discontinuous political event in the world. And the nature of that event is yet to be determined, but it appears that it will involve some type of widespread acknowledgement of there being a great deal of insidious corruption and menace on the planet from the most elite levels. And this is something that I've been talking about for many years. It has now become nearly impossible to talk about, at least on this platform. But I still have the tool of live streaming. I want to be clear that the tool of live streaming is incredibly important because we have the knowledge of the meditation effect, where as little as 7,000 people get together and meditate on what's called pure consciousness, and they are able to reduce global acts of terrorism, war, crimes, fatalities, domestic violence by 72%, meaning that nearly 3 out of all 4 people who would have picked up a gun, who would have committed an act of violence, who would have participated in a riot, let's say, chose not to do so. How did a group of 7,000 people effectuate such a discontinuous change in a much larger subset of population? We've ruled out all of the variables of weekends, weather, holidays, anything that could be a conventional explanation for why this particular effect took place. And yet it does, and it's been documented 39 different times in scientific studies just from the Transcendental Meditation Group, which is the group that initially conducted these studies. It's also been replicated by colleagues of mine, including Art Bell, Greg Braden, and of course, the author of The Field, Lynn McTaggart. All of these folks and others have done intention experiments in which they have gotten measurable effects, not only just on the level of peace, but in fact the actual electromagnetic activity of our planet changes. So this is a very interesting and very far-reaching discussion in terms of why would prayer or meditation cause this type of an effect to occur? How could this even be happening? And the only feasible explanation that I think is suitable is the idea that we are all sharing a mind somehow. There's something in science called the multiples effect, in which you'll have several different people invent the same invention at the same time. There's over 100 examples of this documented. Very bizarre stuff where multiple people, not just Fife Symington's the governor of Arizona. I'm getting my things crossed. There's another Symington who invented the typewriter. And he wasn't the only one. Several people invented the typewriter basically simultaneously. Same thing with the steamboat logarithms, the oxygen molecule, the benzene molecule. There's a variety of these examples where it just the telescope, it just kind of all happens at the same time. Different people doing it basically the same way, filing for patents, and then the question becomes, well, who actually got it? So I understand that it's not a conventional idea to think that your consciousness is shared, but it actually makes a lot of sense in terms of the scientific research that we now have, the data that we have been dealing with. My first book has over 1,000 academic references, source field investigations, and just to be clear, a PhD dissertation is typically between 120 to 150 references. So that would be like the equivalent of 6 or 7 PhDs just in that book alone if you measured it by the dissertation size. So people say, oh, David has no evidence, David has no evidence. That's a very easy thing to do if you don't actually peruse the evidence, if you don't actually look at the 4 published books we've done. The latest one is Awakening in the Dream. You've probably heard me talk about this before. And in this book, I'm really getting into the idea that there are benevolent extraterrestrials in the universe. Now, the benevolent extraterrestrials in the universe are not going to contact governments. That's not how they work. They're not interested in teaching us how to build ships. They're not interested in helping out people that might not have the best intentions. If you read the best literature, and I'm going all the way back now to things like Edgar Cayce, 40,000 psychic readings in which he could diagnose people's medical condition, knowing nothing about them except the name and address where they're going to be at the time of the session. Somehow telepathically, he was able to go to these people, diagnose their medical issues correctly, and prescribed treatments, and those treatments typically involve a holistic mind-body approach to medicine, in which there are spiritual issues that then iterate into the body. So Edgar Cayce, of course, was essentially almost illiterate, a Kentucky farmer, never finished more than 8th grade, immediately went to work farming tobacco and becoming a photographer, and then this whole bizarre situation happened to him where he ultimately was under hypnosis and began speaking with incredible authority, and then they kept trying it, and it turns out that it kept working. So 40,000 documented readings with incredible, impeccable accuracy. There are not very many sources that are that good, but there's a couple others I like that much. One would be the Jane Roberts books, the Seth material. Another would be the Course in Miracles. And the one that I really focus on the most is called the Law of One. Now, why do I focus on the Law of One? This is a question and answer dialogue that actually happens between a PhD physics professor, let's go back to, a PhD physics professor and an alleged extraterrestrial intelligence that claimed that it was working with the Egyptians and that they were responsible for the design and construction of the Great Pyramid. So in one of my later shows coming up, I don't know, maybe in less than a week here, maybe next Sunday, I think it's going to be next Sunday, I'm actually going to go through the Great Pyramid, because now that disclosure is starting to happen, it's incredibly important that you understand how impossible it is that any conventional technology that we have today could have built the Great Pyramid. And what you really need to do is get into the dimensions of the Great Pyramid, the actual measurements of the Great Pyramid. And there are so many intriguing things about the way the Great Pyramid was designed that are absolutely and totally beyond the capabilities of what we have today. Just as one example, did you know that the Great Pyramid of Giza originally looked like a gleaming white marble polished sculpture with no blocks, no visible seams, just a gigantic frickin' white sculpted thing sitting there in what might not have been the desert back then. It might have been more, there might have been trees there. But this white polished, beautiful sculpture, it was only after some earthquakes in the 1300s that those casing stones fell off, and then they were actually used to build mosques in Cairo. Prior to that time, many people had documented these casing stones and how beautiful the pyramid looked, including the Greek historian Herodotus. So the casing stones, my friends, are less than 1/100th of an inch apart, and they have seams between the cracks of the blocks that are 1/100th of an inch apart, which is smaller than the width of a human hair, smaller than the width between the tiles on the space shuttle. And those cracks actually have a glue in them, if you want to call it that. They're bonded to each other such that when you hit it with a sledgehammer, the casing stones break before the glue does. Now, believe it or not, even though the Arabs did take most of those stones away when there was a huge earthquake that shook the pyramid and caused a whole bunch of them to fall off. And then the Arabs essentially removed all the rest and used them to build these beautiful mosques. So that situation reveals to us that there was something very, very scarily extraterrestrial about the way the Great Pyramid looked when it was first built. And when you start to look at some very curious things about it, you'll realize it gets weirder than that. For example, if you take the English inch and you slightly alter it by making it 1.00016 English inches, is I believe the number, then at that point you have exactly 500,000 of those inches between the bottom of the pyramid and the top. Exactly 500,000 inches. And it turns out that this is a mirror of the width of the Earth from pole to pole. It is an exact harmonic multiple of the width of the Earth, the dimensions of the Earth. And it only works with this particular type of inch and the 500,000 inches. So, anyway, yes. Well, there is an open mic, but it's muted, so we don't have any There's no other way to make that echo stop. It's not going to work. There's nothing we can do about it. What monitor? No, that wouldn't do anything. No, we have an echo, and let me listen to it and just see if it's bad. I'm sorry, everybody, but you can't hear it. Okay, well then we're not going to do anything. If we can't hear it, then there's nothing wrong. There's nothing we can do if we can't hear it. It's impossible. Okay, so this is live. There's a lot of stuff going on. I got 400 slides. I've barely even started. Let's get you back on that rig. Anyway, the Great Pyramid thing. Oh, I don't know about the width of the earth at the pole. Well, there's a lot more than that. I mean, this is going to go into a very intense and wonderful discussion. But once we get the acknowledgement from mainstream official sources that we are not alone in the universe, that UFOs are real, that they do exist, okay, if all of that ends up being true, well, we don't want to run another iteration of the video because we're going to hamper our bandwidth. So let's not have anybody else watch the video on our internet right now. Yeah, so we're not, if some people say it's fine, then we're not going to have a problem. All right, no material. Everybody says it sounds good. Some people say echo, some people say no echo, but I don't know, guys. We're getting effed with so badly by the DS. I'm amazed that it's even working at all. So I'm sorry if you have an echo. We don't have it here, so we're going to keep moving. Thank you. Anyway, getting back to this pyramid discussion. What is so bizarre is that the Great Pyramid is normally seen of as some kind of cabal symbol, some kind of dark thing, even to the point where people would say, well, if the beings that built the pyramid came back and are talking now, they must be really evil. Oh. Actually, what I finally have painstakingly done in this book is I've gone through and I have shown that the Great Pyramid of Giza unequivocally is a monument to the coming Christ. It is a Jesus sculpture. It is meant to indicate that Jesus was coming, and then the fulfillment of that agenda, because all of these different esoteric works suggest that what happened to Jesus is also going to be happening to the rest of us. And believe it or not, in John 14:12, Jesus says, "As I do these things, so shall ye do them, and greater things, for I go unto my Father." So Jesus himself in the book of John says, you're going to do these things too. Well, how do we get there? The Great Pyramid actually gives us clues, and it's a very interesting discussion that happens in my book where we analyze the Law of One. We analyze things that most people, even if they think they're really big Law of One scholars, they haven't seen this stuff. Because what we're seeing is that the Law of One has various strange encoded phrases in it, like the use of the term everlasting rock, or the use of the term logos, or the term harvest. Those are three examples off the top of my head that are prominently and repeatedly used in the Law of One that directly tie into the Bible. Plus the fact is the Law of One comes right out and says Jesus was the embodiment of the logos, which they define as the mind of our galaxy. So that's a really big deal. One of my original insiders, Dr. Pete Peterson, said that he apparently visited a base in Antarctica where there are extraterrestrials that are living and working there. And those extraterrestrials had told him that the reason they were here was that the mind of the galaxy had embodied in a human being, and they meant Jesus, and that this doesn't usually happen, and it's very exciting, and they wanted to stop by and see what was going on. So, it's pretty cool when you look at this big disclosure stuff and the idea that Jesus is actually the galactic mind. If the Bible says the Logos made man in its own image, then that would imply the Logos being the galaxy, that the making humans in its image could actually mean that wherever you go in the galaxy, you find human beings on those planets, or human-like beings, hominid 5-star pattern beings. And basically every insider I've ever met has said that that's what's going on, that we are chock full of humans all over the place, and surprisingly, a lot of them look much more like us than we would expect. One of my insiders recently said we're actually kind of short people compared to everybody who's out there. A lot of the times when you meet these people, you're looking up at them, you're not looking down. But they're comfortable looking people. A lot of them don't look scary at all. And you would feel great if you were around them because they actually have a spiritual radiance. These people are more advanced than we are. They're more evolved than we are. And they have been carefully guiding our planet behind the scenes. So all of this could be happening completely apart from any awareness of the military-industrial complex. They appear to contact private individuals, and their goal is to contact those who have the most loving and service-oriented personalities and who can handle this type of thing, because you have to actually be able to receive this gift. And just cultivating your expectation so that you can allow yourself to receive something this wonderful is kind of important. So all of these different sources of esoteric material. Another interesting thing with the Law of One is how eerily it parallels the concept of the rapture in the Bible. The rapture is by far the most, let's go over here now. The rapture is by far the most contentious part of the Bible, and so a lot of people don't really want to go there, even though they're Christians. They say, yeah, I'm Christian, but I don't know about the rapture stuff. Well, okay. As I was just discussing with my wife Elizabeth the other night, who's happily helping us on the switcher there, you want to say hello to everybody? Well, you can unmute it if you want. Well, you gotta turn those up, yeah. Oh, we're not hearing anything from you. Yeah, let me... Okay, well, yeah. We try. Okay. Yeah, the trim was way... Yeah, your trim is way down. That's what it is.
We'll just see what it's like.
I could actually even change the camera angle too. So both of us now actually have a pointer, so we can fight over where the mouse is going. All right, enough of gaping at my wife, you guys. Come on, leave it alone, okay? Anyway, I do have a fancy dancy little thing that's supposed to allow me to switch camera angles on my own, but it's not working right now for some reason. Anyway, I don't want to keep dragging this thing on. Let's go back to the slide then. The big thing is that the big one may be closer than we think. You got positive ETs, and they're focusing on ascension. Let's go back over here. You got positive ETs that are focused on getting us into the ascension, getting us into the next level of human evolution. And they say right there, what they're the most interested in is contacting people who have humility, people who are loving, people who aren't going to get all puffed up about it, and people who are then going to go out there and bravely do something with the knowledge and not just hide it. So we may not... The people who are running our secret space program and our various other things may not even really be aware of what is in the Law of One or where it says that it's going, but I can tell you that if you read Awakening the Dream, and, you know, one more shameless promotion here, I don't make anything from this, it's really true. I don't know what I get per book. It's like maybe $1, $4. I think if it's $4 hardcover and like $1 paperback, or so, it's not very much, folks. So, anyway, if we're looking at what the beings are telling us is true, then the Christian concept of the rapture actually does appear throughout 23 different ancient cultures. And that's one of the things I was telling my wife just the other day. She was asking me, well, how many people have had this prophecy of the solar flash / ascension? Well, all of them. All the ancient cultures do. It doesn't matter whether it's Hinduism, Buddhism, Celtic, Druidic, Native American. I mean, everybody. And I've gone through this extensively in some of my previous work. The only really logical explanation, even on behalf of scholars from Cambridge who have studied all this, is that there was some unified ancient source of this information that then distributed throughout the world in geographically isolated cultures. And then this even gets into very strange things like, why did the Germans pick the swastika? Well, it turns out that shows up all over the world from very long ago. The Hopi have it, the Tibetans have it, it's everywhere. So they just poached a symbol that actually meant something else. If we have been guided over by positive extraterrestrials for this long, they've told us in works like Edgar Cayce and Law of One exactly how they work, and that is they contact private individuals. This whole process that we're going through on Earth, according to Law of One, is an illusion. It's not real in the normal sense. The physical reality is a hologram. And the only thing that really exists is consciousness. And then if you can grok that the only thing that really exists is consciousness, the next step is to say, and it's only got one identity. There's only one identity. And so that's your identity. As you're listening to me right now, you are participating in the original thought, as the Law of One would say. But this is where it gets interesting, the clarification. There's distortions to the original thought. And so we cannot embody the full original thought in our human mind, or actually our bodies would disintegrate. So we only can take portions of the original thought, and we have what they call in the Law of One a personality self, which is what we think would be our personality, our identity. But actually we are what they call a mind-body-spirit complex. We have actually 7 different bodies at each of these 7 densities they talk about. So the universe already happened. It already came and went because time doesn't exist. So all of our lives are simultaneous. And these higher beings that are talked about in my new book and in the Law of One and other sources, they only come in to try to squeeze down how much time it takes for you to go through the necessary things you need to learn. So if you look at it like an accordion, and there's folds on the accordion, if you push the accordion together, there could be less distance between each of these fins. So in that sense, you may actually reach full enlightenment millions and millions of years faster if your higher self can go backwards in time and give you the right things to squeeze the accordion down. That's going to be our new slogan, squeeze the accordion. Welcome to Divine Cosmos, squeeze the accordion. Although it would probably be misinterpreted, and I think we'd get in a lot of trouble. Because they'd think I'm squeezing something else. You know, this is the kind of thing you could talk about with your wife. So. She's like, let's not go there. I know. Come on, I gotta have at least one inappropriate David joke, or it's not really there. Okay, so the main way that these benevolent ETs are going to talk is not to the government, it's not to the military, it's through your dreams. And the book that I just wrote really documents that we all have these guardian angels. They are working for everyone, and if you would like to think of it this way, it totally fits right down into the Christian groove. Okay? Guardian angels, archangels, seraphim, cherubim, all those actually turn out to be real. And what I find incredibly invigorating is the fact that you can change your life. I grew up in a family where if my mother had made $800 less when I graduated from high school, if she'd made $16,000 instead of $16,800 that year in 1991, I would have qualified for the ghetto scholarship program called EOP, or Equal Opportunity Program, where they would have paid me to go to college. So I did not have abundance in the normal sense. And I was raised in a family where our perspective was, if you can do what you love and survive, that's much better than getting a regular job and what we would now say joining the matrix, right? So I was taught, like, it doesn't really matter if you have a great house, or it doesn't really matter even if you live in one room. I mean, in college, I lived in the dorms for 4 years. I was totally happy because I was a scholar. Scholarship gives you that opportunity to just sit down and really dig into something and develop your inner identity. And that's one of the things that has really been delivered to all of us over the last year, the forced seclusion. And that seclusion can create a state that the mystery schools called melancholia, which is the first of 3 stages of enlightenment. You have to become horribly depressed, miserable, and sad before you then take the tools you've acquired and you start using them to go on this quest for great enlightenment. So, I don't think that anybody really knows where this is going or what's going to be happening, because there's the X factor of benevolent ETs, and they have been showing up, and I've documented this, the original Project Camelot witness back in 2007, Mr. X as he was called. His whole perspective was that he had seen these documents, and the documents were from military defense contractors. And those documents indicated that there was a meeting with benevolent ETs that are called the Blues with Eisenhower. And unfortunately, Eisenhower rejected their offer. But the offer was, if we denuclearize, we get rid of all our nuclear weapons, they'll give us all this wonderful technology, free energy, anti-gravity, medical technology, all this kind of great stuff. But the only other thing they wanted besides denuclearization was they wanted to inform people that there's kind of like a unified perspective to all spirituality, that there's an underlying role. Now, Christians don't lose in that process. Christians win in that process, because if you read the Law of One, it actually turns out that it's a Christian work. The woman who was doing it, Carla Ruckert, had the Bible open up above her head to a particular passage that she really loved when she would sing it in choir. She had a incense stick burning, and they also had to always do these positive prayers for protection at the beginning of every session. In addition to that, the Law of One, as I've said before, described that Jesus was the mind of the galaxy. You can't get around that. It's not like there's another mind. And please, for God's sake, can we dispense with this ridiculous Gnostic concept that there is a demiurge that created the universe, and that therefore the whole universe is a fallen creation made by a fallen God, and that the real God is actually Lucifer behind the scenes. I do not believe that. The universe is intelligent. The universe is alive. It's not made by some frickin' half-god. It's real, and it's benevolent. And if these extraterrestrials acknowledge the divinity of Jesus, then in biblical terms, they're angels. Okay, so I think what we're actually going to find out is that extraterrestrial angels do exist, and that is a physical, tangible representation of what we saw in the Bible, and many other ancient works talk about these kinds of people. They might levitate, and then that gets described as wings, but it's really not wings, they're just levitating. And they have clearly supernatural abilities, including telepathy, telekinesis, all this kind of great stuff. So it's very, very fascinating when we start to consider that there is a way in which we could unify the UFO community in modern times with these reports of angelic beings in the Bible and other works. Now, of course, the official disclosure that apparently we're going to be getting in June, it's never going to go there. But what I'm telling you is, don't wait for the government to tell you what you need to know, because you're going to be the last one to know anything. And you're going to pay like $5,000 for something that costs $5. We're not going to...